أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Inshallah, we will start with some recitation of the Quran for the barakah of it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with gathering together in His house in order to reflect on some aspects of the life of His Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the asl of this, which is to enable us to practice the lessons from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا سراجا وحاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات ألفافا إن يوم الفصل كان ميقاتا يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا وفتحت السماء فكانت أبوابا وسيرت الجبال فكانت سرابا إن جهنم كانت مرصادا للطاغين مآبا لابثين فيها قابا لا يذوقون فيها بردا ولا شرابا إلا حميما وغساقا جزاء وفاقا إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزيدكم إلا عذابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وعنابا وكواعب ترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا ذلك اليوم الحق ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. صدق الله العظيم. My brothers and sisters, a day will come when we will see this. A day will come when we will see this. And I can say that with more certainty than I can say that I will see tomorrow. I cannot say with complete certainty that I will see tomorrow. But I can say with complete and total certainty, without any iota of doubt, that ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمُ الْحَقِّ, that this day is haqq, that this day will come. And on that day, everything will become visible. Every reality will become visible. And on that day we will see our Rabb. We will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluh. And we will see Him on His throne. We will see Him on His arsh, about which Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's throne is held up. It is held up by 4 angels who are called the Hamalin Arsh. And he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that I was shown these angels when I went in Isra al Miraj. And he said it is such a massive creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he said that if a bird takes off and starts flying from the shoulder of this angel, it will fly for 500 years before it reaches the earlobe of that angel. He says that is the size of one of those angels. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created 4 of these angels to carry His throne. But on the day of judgment, those 4 angels will not be able to hold the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because the jalal of Allah will be such. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create 4 more angels on that day to hold His throne. And they will hold His throne by saying, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Not by their strength, but by the strength of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the power of our Rabb. And we will see Him in His glory. And I ask Him to enable us and to decree that we see Him from under the shade of His throne, inshallah. On the day when there will be no shade except His shade. And about the day and about that shade for which His Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made this dua, and he said, Allahumma azillani tahta arshuk yawma la dhillu illa dhilluk. He said, oh Allah, give me the shade of your throne on the day when there will be no shade except your shade. And I make this dua for all of you, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather us all like He gathered us today, under the shade of His throne. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you will see on that day there will be some people who will be given not only the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they will be seated on thrones of pearls, on mimbars of pearls. And they will be greatly honored. And he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that people will ask, and they will say, who is this? Is this person a Nabi? Is this person someone who died in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is he a shaheed fi sabilillah? And it will be said about those people to the questioners that this is neither a Nabi, nor did this person die as a shaheed fi sabilillah. But he said, but this is a person from the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam who used to invite towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The tafsir today ended on the part of Surah Yasin where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this man. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلُونَ. This man came and he said to the people, believe and obey the messengers. Now this man himself is not a Nabi. The man himself is not a Nabi. But the man came and spoke in favor of the Anbiya. He came and told the people, obey the Anbiya. And then there was some more conversation, and then they killed the man. And the man was given Jannah. قِيلَتْ قُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. And when the man said, قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ قِيلَتْ قُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. When the man was told, enter the Jannah, the man said, يَا لَيْتَنِ, what is it? يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِ يَعْلَمُونَ بِمَا غَفَرَ لِرَبِّي وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُكْرَمِينَ. He said, I wish my people could know how my Rabb has honored me. This desire of that man, that his people should know how his Rabb honored him. His Rabb honored that desire by mentioning this story of this man and how his Rabb honored him in Surah Yasin, in Quran al-Kareem, to be recited in Salah until the Day of Judgment, until Allah decides to keep the world and until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to keep his kalam in this world. That is the level which tells us about the work and the job of inviting towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the work of da'wah. And it is for this purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent every Nabi. And that's the reason why if you read the Quran, the mention of the Anbiya, the 25 whatever number of Anbiya that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not mentioned the personal ibadat of any Nabi. Allah did not tell us how many nawafil Ibrahim alayhi salam used to pray, or what wazifa Musa alayhi salam used to pray. Allah did not tell us anything about the personal ibadat of any of the Anbiya. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the work of da'wat of every Nabi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, and the kalam, this is why it's very important for us to read the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not just read the kalam and read the meanings, but see the sense and the atmosphere of that whole thing. And that's why it's important to understand Arabic. It's the whole atmosphere of this thing. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks with such love, with such affection about his Anbiya. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and how Ibrahim alayhi salam gave da'wah to his father, and what what reply he got from his father, and how he gave da'wah to the king, and how he gave da'wah to the people who were worshipping idols, and how he gave da'wah to the king, and the conversation with the king. Where the king said, Ibrahim alayhi salam said, my Rabb gives life and death, and the king said, I also give life and death. And the Mufassirin have said that he said, I will demonstrate that, and he called two people who were sentenced to death, and he ordered one to be killed and he ordered the other one to be left. And he says, I have given life and death. Shaitan plays games with the mind. How can you say you gave life to somebody who is already alive? I mean, it's ridiculous. But the king said this. And then of course the story of how Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do at that time with the fire? Imagine what could Allah have done? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have sent rain. Allah could have put out the fire. Allah could have sent Jibreel alayhi salam. He could have sent an angel to go say, put out the fire. He could have sent an angel to say, when they are throwing him with the catapult, pick him up in midair and take him away. No. What did Allah do? Qulna. Didn't cool the fire. Qulna ya nar kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly addressed the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to the fire. This is the ikram of the Nabi. This is the honor of the Nabi. Reflect on the Quran. Reflect on the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't just read the kalam and go away. Reflect on the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about this. What is the need? Why must the creator of the heavens and the earth speak to some fire in the world? If the purpose is to save Ibrahim alayhi salam, there are many ways of doing it. One blow of the horn of Israfil alayhi salam will destroy everything which exists. Just one thing, gone. So what is the fire? The ikram of the Nabi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who invite towards him. And Allah does their ikram. Ikram of the Nabi. Allah spoke to the fire. So also if you take the story of Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes this whole beautiful scene. Every time I read that, I think, subhanAllah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the scene of Musa alayhi salam standing in the court of Firaun. And put yourself in that situation. The Mufassirin say that Musa alayhi salam was a big tall man. He was very dark in complexion. He was a warrior. So he was a huge big muscled man. And he had come out of the desert. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said Musa alayhi salam had one mishla. He used to wear this thobe over his inner garment. And he said that he used to spread it on the ground and sleep on it in the night. And in the morning he would dust it off and he would wear it. These are not people who love the life of luxury. These are people who are tough people. It takes a tough man. That's why I say whenever we teach tafsir of the Quran, let us open a map and follow those routes. It's easy to say he went from Misr to Madian. Which Misr, which Madian? Where was he in Misr? Where did he go? Which place did he go? What was the route? What was the topography like? What kind of land did he walk through? He walked. There was no Egypt there to take him from point to point, right? He walked. And he walked until his shoes wore out. And remember, he just left because the warner came and told him, he said, look, they're after your life and they've passed a sentence on you and they're coming for you. So he just left. There's no bag, no baggage, no nothing. He walked through the desert, he walked through the forest. I mean, imagine, it takes some kind of toughness. Takes some kind of toughness. So there he's come back now. He's standing in the court of Firaun. Ramesses II, Pharaoh of Egypt, Pharaoh of the upper and lower kingdoms, who considered himself to be divine, who considered himself to be God. And Musa alayhi salam is standing in his court. Put yourself in that situation. Musa alayhi salam had a turban on his head. He had a big beard which was disheveled. He had this cloak of his. He had his staff in his hand, full of dust. Standing there alone. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described this scene and he described the actual conversation. He described the arrogance of Firaun, who says, Ma Rabbul Alameen? Who is Rabbul Alameen? What Rabbul Alameen are you saying? Ma Rabbul Alameen? And the reply of Musa alayhi salam, Rabbi samawati wal ardi wa ma baynahuma in kuntum muqinin. He is the Rabb of the heavens and the earth and everything else in between. And Firaun says, you listen to him? The man is mad. He's crazy. He's Majnoon. And Musa alayhi salam again talks about his Rabb. Those ayat are a classic example of how to give dawah in a hostile environment. Musa alayhi salam does not engage with Firaun at all. Read those ayats, reflect on those ayats. Why did Musa alayhi salam not argue with the Firaun? He didn't argue with him. He did not engage with him at all. He didn't tell him, you are crazy, I am not crazy. You are the one who's saying he is God. No, nothing. He didn't reply to him at all. Musa alayhi salam is describing the glory and majesty of his Rabb. Where does he have time for someone talking nonsense? So every time the man says something, Musa alayhi salam talks about his Rabb. Every time the man says something, Musa alayhi salam talks about his Rabb. There is no, the story of Musa alayhi salam, the words of Musa alayhi salam never change. It's a classic guide for those who want to give dawah in a hostile environment. Do not engage with the environment. Don't argue with anybody. You talk about the greatness of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will establish His greatness. Allah described that thing in detail. And so on with other Anbiya. I don't want to go into all of that detail just now, but my point is that do think about this and say that before we come to the Seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and which is what we will do, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His Anbiya for a purpose. And that purpose was to introduce Himself to His makhluk. Now it is the barakah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to make him the last and final messenger, after whom there is no Nabi, after whom there is no Rasul. And that is the reason why this great work of great honor, which before his time, before the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this work was not given to any ordinary person. This work was given only to the Anbiya. The work of introducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people was the work of the Anbiya alone. What were the people supposed to do? They were supposed to obey the Anbiya. Worship Allah. Do not worship anyone other than Allah. Whatever is the Sharia of the time, whatever qawaneen had come, whatever rules and regulations and laws had come, obey those laws. That's it. Your job is over. If someone wants to know who is Allah, what do? Send him to the Nabi. The job of introducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalla Jalaluhu, to the people was the job of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, not anybody else. But because of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this job to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allah gave us this job of the Anbiya. I want you to reflect on this. I want you to think about this. Not just, I'm sure you've heard these words and this statement many times. What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of, that green tea somebody was had? What is the meaning of saying that the job of the Anbiya was given to us? There are two aspects to remember very clearly about the job of the Anbiya. The Anbiya introduced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the people, and the Anbiya alayhimus salam did not change the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any way. The integrity of the message. Every Nabi spoke directly and spoke clearly and without any doubt with what he was saying. And therefore, when we want to do the work of dawah, we must remember this is a very, very critical element. And what is the result of this work? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why I gave you the examples of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, and this applies across the board. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help comes for the Anbiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects. Allah said, Allahu ya'asimuka minan nas. Allah will protect you from the people. Allah protects. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes the hearts to be softened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes the words to enter the hearts. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes conditions to make them conducive to the propagation of His message. But all of this happens provided you stay clear with the integrity of the message. provided you do not compromise the integrity of the message. And that's why it's very, very important to do that. And that's what brings me to our topic today, which is from the Seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about the leadership lessons from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is out of my book, which is by the same name, Leadership Lessons from the Life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The book is available in India, it's available on Amazon, it's available on Kindle. It's now being published in Malaysia, in South Africa, in Bangladesh it has been published, and in Bangladesh they are also translating it into Bangla. So Alhamdulillah, this book is, I'm not boasting, may Allah protect my knee, but I'm just to let you know that this book of leadership lessons from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is unique. There is no other book of this kind till to date. This is the first book of its kind. There is no other book like this. And in the English language, it is absolutely the first book of its kind. In Arabic, some other people have written something about the leadership style of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but specific lessons nobody has written. So Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the opportunity of presenting the Seerah in a unique way, in a way which is understandable in the modern world, which is understandable for people like you and me in our modern sense. So I've used the stories of the Seerah, but I've always related it to say, therefore what does it mean for us? The Seerah is not just meant for us to tell stories and cry a few tears and go home. No, the Seerah is meant for us to become winners in this life. The Seerah is meant for us to become winners in what we do. So what did Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So as I said, three lectures today, day after tomorrow and the day after that, 25th, 27th, 29th, 3 lectures in the night will cover these lessons. Today, I'm going to deal with 2 parts, 2 lessons from the Seerah, which is the lesson of certainty of his message and confidence in conveying the message. These 2 lessons we will deal with today, inshallah. And I will close with the story, and all the 3 days we will do that. I will close with the story of one of the Sahaba of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam who exemplified this particular quality of his dawah. Now imagine, put yourself in the scene. Put yourself in the scene. Here is this man from the Shurafa, from the nobility of Quraysh, from a family of Banu Hashim, from the family known to be people of great honor, the people who used to take care of the Kaaba, the grandson of Abdul Muttalib, one of the major leaders of the Quraysh, a person who in his own right earned the title of Sadiqul Amin. Sadiqul Amin, the truthful one and the trustworthy one. On a side note, there is a beautiful hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam where somebody asked him, they said, Ya Rasulullah, can a Muslim commit this kind of sin and that kind of sin? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, a Muslim can commit any kind of sin. After all, they are human beings. He can commit any kind of sin except 2 things. And they said, what 2 things? And he said, a Muslim cannot lie and a Muslim cannot cheat. A Muslim cannot lie and a Muslim cannot cheat. Now I remember when I read this hadith, I thought to myself, well, it's okay. This, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said this, a Muslim cannot lie and cannot cheat, but what's so significant about that? There are so many other things which are like murder and fornication and whatnot. He didn't say a Muslim cannot commit murder. He said he cannot lie, he cannot cheat. So I thought to myself, what is so significant about these 2 things? Until one day it dawned on me that when he said a Muslim cannot lie and he cannot cheat, he gave every single one of us his own title. Who is a Sadiq? The one who doesn't lie. And who is Amin? The one who doesn't cheat. Who is a Muslim? A Muslim is the one who is a Sadiqul Amin. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave each one of us his own personal title of As-Sadiqul Amin. Ajib, huh? See the beauty of that hadith. He gave, what bigger honor can you want? What bigger honor can you want? That you and I will be described. May Allah give us lives where we become worthy of this. Where you and I will be described by the same words. that Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was described by. And you say, who is this Muslim? He said, he is Sadiqul Amin. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us, each one of us, he gave us his own personal title. So here was this man who is a Sadiqul Amin. People believed him. People greatly honored him. He was a young man. He was 40 years old. He wasn't very old. And here was this man who they honored to the extent that we know the story of the reconstruction of the Kaaba and the story of Hajar al-Aswad, how it was put into the corner and all of that. So you know the story, so I don't want to take your time describing that, but just to let you know that this is the kind of honor his own community gave him. So one day, now put yourself in that situation. Now one day this man climbs up on the mount of Safa, and we know where Safa is. Put yourself in that situation. It's next to the Kaaba, very close to the Kaaba. It's a little hillock on top there. Now he climbed up on Safa and he called out. He said, "Wa Subaha." Now Wa Subaha is like, in America you say you dial 911. Huh? It's like calling the police. It's the emergency call. Emergency, come running. And remember, it's not just anybody calling that. It can be somebody who nobody believes. Hey, this guy, he makes a noise. No. Here is someone who is highly trustworthy. So it's not just someone making the emergency call, but it's an emergency call being made by someone who is highly credible, highly believable, highly trustworthy. So people ran. They left their shops. And even if you look at some pictures of some of these old pictures of Makkah and the Haram get circulated on the net, and even in the as late as 50s and 60s, there were shops all around the Haram. Sa'i actually used to be made through a market. There were shops lining both sides of that path between Safa and Marwa, and people used to walk up and down Sa'i, and there were shops on either side. So there were shops all over the place. So people left their shops. Abu Lahab left his shop, and they all came. And he said, yes, what is it? And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said to them, O people, if I told you that there is an army behind this hill, would you believe me? He's establishing the fact that you consider me to be credible. He's establishing that fact. And this is part of learning how to lead. Before you tell anyone to do something, establish this equation between you and that person. Do you really believe me? Do you accept that I am truthful? So now I am telling you something. So he said, if I tell you that there is an army behind this hill, will you believe me? Then they said, of course. You are Sadiqul Amin. You never told a lie before in your life. You've always spoken the truth. So if you tell us that you are seeing this army because you are standing on the hilltop, you can see behind the hill, we cannot see behind the hill. So if you tell us that there is an army behind the hill, of course we believe you. So then he gives the message. And he says, I have come to warn you of a severe punishment if you do not leave polytheism and if you do not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Direct message. No beating about the bush, no mincing words. Direct message. Do you believe me if I tell you there's an army? Yes, we believe you. All right, so now believe me. I'm telling you that you are in serious trouble because you are committing shirk. You are worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Worship only Allah. La ilaha illallah. But you know the nature of the world? The nature of the world is Abu Lahab, his own uncle. And remember, when we say uncle, we unfortunately in this country and so on, we have lost our Islamic family ties, right, among the Arabs, and we have enough Arabs, alhamdulillah, in this, and they will bear me out. The is equal to the father. Yes? The uncle is equal to the father. They honor the uncle like they honor the father, because he is the father's brother. And the uncle's responsibility is equal to the father's responsibility. If the father dies, if the brother dies and the children are there, automatically it's a matter of the honor of the uncle that he has to take those children, look after them. He can't leave them. If he leaves them, then the people will spit on him. They say, what kind of a man are you? You leave your brother's children. They are like your children. So when we say uncle of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Abu Lahab was his own uncle, the closest family relation that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had. And this same Abu Lahab, when Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was born, he was so happy that he released a slave. And he gave, gold bangles that his brother had a son. And the same man, he said to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, may your hands break. He said, you called us for this? You called us for this? That shows us two things. And these are very important things to understand, because if you see the nature of society then, and if you see the nature of society today, you will find that there are huge similarities. My graduation was in political science. And therefore, I am talking about it from the aspect of political science. If you look at the nature of the society at the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and what was the driving force behind it, it was, in modern language, it was a free market economy. It was a materialistic society. It was a society where money and net worth were the only criteria for going up the societal ladder. There was no caste system as such. You could be born poor, but if you made enough money, you were allowed to climb the social ladder until you became one of the shura and one of the majlis and so on and so forth. So it was a society very similar to our society today, which is that the only thing which counts is how much money you have. High net worth individual. That's our terminology today, right? HNI, high net worth individual. Abu Lahab was a high net worth individual. He was a wealthy man. And if you read the history of the Quraysh, they had become wealthy only in one generation. So they were not too far away from their earlier state of poverty. So for them, wealth was something which was very important and very, they loved it very much. They hadn't had it for too long. They could still remember, some of the older ones, they could still remember the time when they didn't have money. So money was a very important driving force of that society. And Abu Lahab said, you called us for this, meaning what? Meaning that we were doing our business, we were making money, we were doing deals, and you call us to tell us about some afterlife and akhirah. I mean, what is all this pie in the sky stuff? This is rubbish. The only thing which matters is this world. The only thing which matters is what I have in my hand. And that's exactly the kind of society that we are living in. Now think about this. What options did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have? Was this the only way to give dawah? Did he have any other options? Could he have maybe approached this whole thing in a different manner? Supposing you were an advisor to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam at that time, say for example, imagine that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes to you and says, look, you know what, I got this wahi and Allah has told me go warn the people. What do you think I should do? You are a great leadership consultant and you are communication expert and so on and so forth. So please advise me. What do you think I should do? And I can tell you, and not only me, but I don't think there is a single communication expert in the world who will tell him, go and stand on that hill and tell it like it is. Go and stand on the hill and tell it like it is. Not a single person will give that advice, believe me. And if he said, you know what, I'm planning to do this, I'm planning to go stand on the hill and tell it like it is, the man will say, you're crazy. Don't even think of that. That's the best way of destroying yourself. That's the best way of converting everybody into your enemy overnight. Today, some people are your friends, some may like you, some may not like you, but the best way to convert everyone into your enemy is to go and stand on that hill and tell it like it is. Then why did he do it? Why did he do it? Think about this. What options did he have? According to me, he had 3 options. His first option was that he could have become or tried to become a king of the Quraysh, which was a doable thing because he actually came from a family of nobility. He was associated directly with the Kaaba and so on and so forth. People trusted him and everything else. So he could have got a position of leadership, become a king of the Quraysh, and then he could have, from a position of authority, he could have said whatever he wanted to say. Right? That's one option that was available to him. The second option that he had was to make changes but make them gradually. Now I'm sure this one will, touch all your hearts, huh? Because that's what we do. Don't be soft, brother. Be nice, brother. Be gradual about it. And everyone has only one example to give you. Tell them, leave that example and tell me about, they don't have another. What's the example they give you? Oh, you see the ayat of the prohibition of alcohol, they did not come immediately. They came in stages. So you want to prohibit idol worship also in stages. First worship leave the small ones, then leave the middle-sized ones. You must ask these people who give all these dalail without even understanding anything. The prohibition of alcohol came in stages, I agree. But how come, therefore, if that is the logic, how come the prohibition of idol worship also didn't come in stages? It should have come in stages, no? If that logic is workable, then idol worship should have also been prevented in stages. How come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't do that? One shot from day one, leave it. Leave how much of it? Leave all of it. And if you don't leave it, what will happen? You will become the meat on a barbecue. I mean, where is the softness and the niceness and the diplomacy and the nothing? Straight. So second option was, one option, become a king, get position of authority, and then try to put forward your message. Second option, do it gradually, diplomatically, talk to some people, build some pressure groups, all of that stuff. Third one was that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could have taken the route of the social activist. I mean, Allah knows the society of Makkah was as evil as it can be. It was like our societies today. There was all kinds of stuff there, all kinds of excess, all kinds of crime, all kinds of addictions, all kinds of stuff, and prostitution and this and that and all kinds of stuff. So there was enough material for someone to become a social activist and take the social activism route and say, we are here to address poverty, we are here to address exploitation of women, for example, empowerment of women. Why don't we have an international conference on the empowerment of women? So let's do that first, right? And then we approach it from that route. And then now, so what will happen? You will get some supporters. People, yeah, that's a good idea. We should not treat women like this, right? Or we must not treat our slaves this way, or whatever it is. And once you build some support, then you say, well, let's talk about God, and what do you think about God, and should we worship one God or maybe several gods? So the point I want to make is, it's not as if there were no options. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had the options, but he didn't take any of them. He was operating according to the instructions from his Rabb. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. His Rabb said very clearly, he does not do things on his own. He does what he is told to do. So when he went and stood on the hill and he announced, that was the instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to him. Now what is the leadership lesson in this? Two major lessons. Number one is to have, before you can say something, to have complete and total certainty of belief in your own message. Because there is no way that you are going to go stand there and say something that you are doubtful about yourself. Cannot happen. If you don't have that level of certainty, you cannot talk about it. And therefore it is very important in terms of leadership to be very clear in your mind about what it is that you are propagating, what is it that you are projecting forth. And the second one is to have complete and total faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that you have the confidence to go and stand there alone. Alone. At that time when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood there was no one to stand by his side. He stood alone. That confidence comes from where? With ta'alluq with his Rabb. With ta'alluq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jalla Jalalu. And that is why before the ayat came telling him to go out there and announce, before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, warn your close relatives. Before Allah said, go and propagate the message openly and loudly, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach him? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to him, Ya ayyuhal muzammilu qumil layla illa khalila nisfahu aw inqus minhu qalila aw zid alayhi warattilil qur'ana tartila inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila inna nashiyatal layli hiya ashaddu wat'an wa aqwamu qila. Before sending him out there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him resources. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him from his power. And how did he give him? He said, "Oh my Nabi, the one wrapped in garments, stand up in the night. Stand up in the night for the whole night except for a small piece. And do what? Rattilil Qur'ana tartila." In our language, if you go to a hifz madrasa, what does the ustad say to the student? He said, sabak sunaiye. Kya yaad kiya hai? Daur kiye. Sabak sunaiye. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to his Nabi. Sabak sunaiye, what have you learnt? Tell me, repeat. Rattilil Qur'ana tartila. Kalam sunaiye. Kiska kalam sunaiye? Hamara kalam sunaiye. Kisko sunaiye? Humko sunaiye. See the connection with the Rabb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the teacher, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the student. And this is what Allah did with all the Anbiya. Direct teaching of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Nabi. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we know it is very difficult to get up in the night. Hiya ashad. It is difficult. But it is the best thing to understand the kalam of Allah and to bring discipline into your life. And why must you do this? Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. You're going to be giving you a very heavy responsibility. So prepare yourself for that responsibility. The reason I'm saying this, my brothers and sisters, is because that's our responsibility. And how are we going to do da'wat of Islam if we cannot wake up in the night for tahajjud? That is where you get the strength from. That is where you get the power from. And then you take it from there. That is what gives you the confidence. That is what gives you the confidence when you go and stand there. The Anbiya therefore never diluted their message. They said it like it is, and they said it without compromise. My brothers and sisters, many times when we are working, we feel that we work very hard, but we don't see any results, and we tend to lose hope. And we say, how long to do this? I'm doing something, I'm trying to establish something, I'm trying to give a message, but people are not responding, people don't support. But you know, the message from the Seerah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is to continue to do the work only and only to please Allah. And do it how long? However long it takes. However long it takes. There are no criteria for quitting. One of my brothers asked me this question today. I told him, make your life goal. He said, well, what are the criteria for quitting that I should keep? I said, I don't know, because I never quit. You're asking the wrong person. I have no idea. Criteria for quitting, what kind of nonsense is that? Even before you start something, you want criteria for quitting. Why do you start at all? Go quit. That's why you don't achieve anything. That is the reason why you don't achieve anything. You only talk. Philosophy, rubbish. People who want to work, who want to achieve, they work, they don't talk. And they don't have criteria for quitting. They have criteria for working. And how long will they work? Until they get success or until they die, whichever comes first. And that is why work happens. That is why work happens. No criteria for quitting. The Anbiya never had criteria for quitting. How do you think Nuh alayhi salam worked for 950 years? Did he have criteria for quitting? How do you think Ibrahim alayhi salam worked his whole life and he had almost no followers? Which is the Ummah of Ibrahim alayhi salam? The Ummah of Ibrahim alayhi salam is himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, my Ibrahim is an Ummah in himself. Kana Ummah. He said, one man. He said, my Ibrahim is the whole Ummah is Ibrahim alone. Khalilullah alayhi salam. No criteria for quitting. And so let me tell you the story of one of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain who lived by this criteria of success. And this man again, he belonged actually to a tribe of highway robbers. There were two major tribes of highway robbers, the Ghifar, the Banu Ghifar and the Banu Aslam. And this man belonged to the Banu Ghifar. He heard about this messenger and this prophet and this Nabi among the Quraysh in Makkah. So he sent his brother to go and check out. His brother went and he tried to find out some things and he could not meet Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so he came back. So this man, he was highly dissatisfied with that and he said, no, I have to go myself. So he went. And he says himself, he said, I reached Makkah and he said, I was afraid of directly asking for Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam because I knew the atmosphere was extremely hostile and anyone who asked for him or anyone who wanted to meet him and so on was attacked and so forth. So he said, I just went and I stayed around the Kaaba and I said, well, I'm sure he's going to turn up here sooner or later. And he had no money, so he said, I just stayed around the Kaaba and he said, I only drank Zamzam. And he said, I drank Zamzam and I put on weight. He said, I put on weight until my belly was over my belt. And that's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Zamzam is food. And one day he met Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam presented Islam to him. And he immediately accepted. One of the Sabiqun al-Awwalun min al-Muhajirin, because he did Hijrah later. He immediately accepted. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, I want to go and announce this. I want to go and announce this. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, no, don't announce it now. Go back to your tribe and wait until I tell you when to announce it. But those who love Allah, those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces His love into their hearts, they are peculiar people. They are peculiar people. They cannot hold that information. They cannot hold that information. They have to tell the world about it. So he went, even though Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told him not to announce, he went and he stood in the Kaaba and he announced. And of course the expected happened. The people got together, they beat him, and he fell to the ground and they beat him some more and some more, until Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, he came and he stopped them and he said, do you know what you are doing here? He said, this man is from the tribe of Ghifar. He said, if you kill him, then they will not allow your caravans to travel from out of Makkah. Then what will you do? So they left him. They didn't leave him because of any sympathy. They left him because it made economic sense. In our world today, you have to present everything in from an economic framework. Give me a reason, and that reason has to be in dollars. And that's what they gave him, a reason. So they left him. So this man, and what was his name? Abu Dharr Ghifari radiyallahu anhu. Who is this Abu Dharr? This Abu Dharr Ghifari radiyallahu anhu is a man. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sitting one day and Jibreel alayhi salam was sitting with him. And Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu passed in the distance and Jibreel alayhi salam said, Ya Rasulullah, there goes your friend Abu Dharr. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Jibreel, you know Abu Dharr? Jibreel alayhi salam said, Ya Rasulullah, which one of us, meaning the Malaika? He said, which one of us does not know your friend Abu Dharr? I always tell people, you want fame, no? We all want fame. Fame does not come in your TRP index or on your number of hits on YouTube. Fame comes from how many Malaika know your name. How many angels recognize you. How many angels recognize your voice when you raise your voice in dua. How many angels will stop by to listen to your recitation of the Quran. That is fame. Beings from another dimension. Beings who are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They know you, they recognize you. So one day when they come for you, they are not coming to a stranger. And when you go with them, you are not going with strangers. نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. We are your friends. We were your friends. And we continue to be your friends. So Abu Dharr Ghifari then went back to his tribe. And the da'wah of Abu Dharr Ghifari with his tribe, one day, many years later, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was in Medina, and people suddenly got worried and afraid, and they said, Ya Rasulullah, it looks like we are being attacked. He said, what happened? He said, there is a whole army that is marching towards Medina. And when they made some inquiries, they said, who are they? Which is the army? Said, this is the whole tribe of Ghifar. And they are coming with all their weapons and everything else. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, who is there with them? They said, there is Abu Dharr with him. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam smiled. He said, this is not coming to attack. This is not coming to attack. And Abu Dharr Ghifari came and said, Ya Rasulullah, I brought them all. He said, I brought them all. And when Abu Dharr Ghifari's tribe, the Banu Ghifar, became Muslim, the Banu Aslam, the other bunch of hoodlums and highway robbers, they said, if the Ghifar become Muslim, we have to become Muslim. And the entire tribe of Aslam became Muslim. On the dawah of one man, two major tribes accepted Islam. One man. Who is Abu Dharr? Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu is the one about whom Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as-sadiqul ameen, rahmatul lil alameen, he said about Abu Dharr, he said, the earth never carried above it, nor did the sky ever shade under it a more truthful tongue than the tongue of Abu Dharr. This is the certificate of truthfulness given by whom? By Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, the earth never carried above it and the sky never shaded under it a tongue that was more truthful than the tongue of Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu. And 14 centuries later, thousands of miles from the country in which this statement was made, I am sitting here repeating that statement. That is the meaning of fame. That is the meaning of credibility. That is the meaning of name and honor. One day, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called Abu Dharr Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu. And he said to him, Ya Abu Dharr, if you see commanders of the Muslims, if you see the amirs of the Muslims misappropriating and grabbing the ghanima more than their share, what will you do? Abu Dharr Ghifari said, Ya Rasulullah, I will take my sword to them. He said, I will strike them with my sword. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya Abu Dharr, shall I guide you to something which is better than that? See the teaching methodology of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, shall I guide you to something better than that? And Abu Dharr al-Ghifari said, Ya Rasulullah, please. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, be patient until you meet me. He said, be patient until you meet me. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going in the battle of Tabuk. And we know that this whole Ghazwa of Tabuk, a battle actually never happened. But that entire incident has huge significance in terms of who went with him and who stayed back and what kind of excuses people made and so on and so forth. And there's the whole story of people who were sincere but who could not go and all of that. So he's going, and a day passed, 2 days passed, and people kept coming and reporting to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, so and so is not with us, and so is not with us. And people said, so is a munafiq, and they're making all these statements. And one day somebody came and says, Abu Dharr is not with us. And Abu Dharr has, he has no sincerity or something. They made a critical statement. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't like it. So he didn't say anything, but he didn't like it. And then later, people saw a dust cloud in the distance, way behind the army, like a single person, a single rider. They saw way in the distance, miles away. So they said, wonder who is this one single person coming? And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, maybe it is Abu Dharr. And late that night, Abu Dharr Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu came. And when he reached, he was carrying his camel saddle and the saddlebags on his shoulders. He said, where's your camel? He said, Ya Rasulullah, my camel was weak and it couldn't keep up with the army. So I decided to leave the camel. And I walked. He unloaded his camel, he put all the stuff on his back and he walked. That was Abu Dharr Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu. Tough people, hard people, not afraid of anything. So Abu Dharr Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu was given this counsel by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not to raise his sword against the Muslims. But Abu Dharr Ghifari radhiyallahu anhu never stopped raising his voice against the people who were in authority, who were not doing what they were to be doing, what they should have been doing. He didn't raise his sword, but he spoke against them. And he said to them, he went all the way to Sham. And he met the Amir. And he said to him and he said to others, he said to them, were you not the people who were witness to the wahi? Were you not the people who were witness to the wahi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which came to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, are you not the same people who listened to the recitation of the Quran from the tongue of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And they said, yes. He said, then what has happened to you today? Why are you chasing money? How do you justify these palaces that you are living in? How do you justify these great, beautiful gardens that you have? Now remember, Islam does not prevent you from having wealth. Islam doesn't prevent you, and these people, we're talking about, the Amir at that time was Muawiyah radhiyallahu anhu bin Abi Sufyan. He's a Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wasn't doing anything haram. And the other people who were there, Abu Hurairah, for example, radhiyallahu anhu, he was one of the commanders in one place. Abu Musa al-Ashari radhiyallahu anhu, he was a commander in one place. One day Abu Dharr Ghifari was there and Abu Musa came and he said, "Oh, my brother." And he came to embrace him. Abu Dharr Ghifari said, "Stay away from me. I was your brother." He said, "I'm not your brother anymore." So Abu Musa said, "What is this? Why do you say this? How is it that you say I'm not your brother? Why?" He said, "Because you have accepted a position of authority and you have wealth. Stay away from me." Now, was Abu Musa al-Ashari's wealth haram? No. But Abu Dharr Ghifari was a man like that. He was a man, he was a zahid, he was a man who was very hard with himself. And he was a man who was very particular about the methodology of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu lived all the way into the Khilafah of Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu. When he was living under the Khilafat of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu and under Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he had no problems. Because both of these Khulafa, at that time, the kind of tight control that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu maintained, and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, of course, was only there for 2 years, but Umar ibn al-Khattab was a longer period. The kind of control they maintained, and we know the stories of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu himself, of how he used to dress and his simplicity of his life and so on. Abu Dharr Ghifari was fine with all that. He didn't have any problem. But in the time of Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, there were the futuhat and ghanima came and wealth came. Alhamdulillah, all of that is halal. Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu is one of the greatest of our leaders. We honor him like we honor all the Khulafa. He is among the Khulafa Rashida. We don't criticize Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu. Let's understand this very clearly. When I'm mentioning this, I'm not saying it in a critical manner about Uthman radiallahu anhu. No. I'm just saying that times changed and wealth came. So why was Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu criticizing people who had wealth halal? The wealth of Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu was not haram. The wealth of the other people of Muawiyah and so on, and Abu Huraira and Abu Musa and so forth, radiallahu anhu ajmain, was not haram. But why was Abu Dharr Ghifari criticizing that? Because Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu understood the power of money to corrupt. He understood the power of money to corrupt. He understood the fact that the change that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam made was the meaning of high net worth individual. High net worth individual pre-Islam was Abu Lahab. High net worth individual post-Islam was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. The meaning of high net worth changed from someone who had money to someone who had iman. From someone who had wealth, material, to someone who had character. From someone who had connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was also a high net worth individual, except the kind of net worth changed. And Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu was afraid that maybe the way the trend is going of things are happening, maybe the Ummah is going to go back to the old definition of high net worth individual. My brothers and sisters, you tell me, was Abu Dharr right or was Abu Dharr right? Radiallahu anhu. What is our definition today of high net worth individual? Our definition today of high net worth individual, is it close to the definition of Abu Lahab or Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu? Which one? Do we care two hoots where the money comes from? One of the lectures that is there in the afternoon is on this issue of haram and halal. Come and listen to that, tell you some details. Are we concerned about where the money comes from? Or as long as there is money, no matter where it comes from? In our Hyderabadi Urdu, there is a phrase, Dal Abdullah Gud Thaile mein bolte usko. कहीं से भी अंदर क्या करने का अपना है. Say that in English. There's something which are not translatable, sir. So Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu was apparently harsh because of two reasons. One, because he understood the power of money and authority to corrupt. And may Allah bless him, if you read the history of Islam, you can see how Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu was right. It is sad that unfortunately He could not influence people. And the second reason he was hard was because he expected the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain to have a standard which was very high and different from the standard of everybody else. He said, you are the people who received the wahi. And Abu Dharr Ghifari was one of those people who didn't just talk. He held himself to the standard of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the standard of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu. One day, a man came to him and he saw Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu sitting, and he was wearing a thobe which was not, it was kind of patched and so on. And the man said to him, he said, why are you dressed like this? Why don't you wear another thobe? So Abu Dharr Ghifari said, I have only this one thobe. He said, no, I saw you 2 days ago and you had 2 other thobes in your hand. What happened to that? He said, I gave it away. There was a man who came, he needed it more than me, so I gave it to him. And then Abu Dharr Ghifari says to the man, he said, I have 2 thobes. One for daily wear and one for Jummah. He said, I have 1 goat which I milk. And he said, I have 1 donkey which I ride. He said, is there anything better than this? He says to the man, he says, I have 2 thobes. One which I wear every day and one I keep for Jummah. He said, I have 1 goat which I milk, so I have something to eat. And he said, I have 1 donkey which I ride. He said, is there anything better than this? How merciful is Allah to me? Seriously, my brothers and sisters, think about our standards, wallahi. Because remember, these are the gold standard. These people are the standard against which we will be judged. May Allah protect us. What are we going to say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I will close with the last days of Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu. Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu became such a source of problem in Sham that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu sent a message to Uthman ibn Affan and said, call him back to Medina. He was a Sahabi, and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu never insulted him or he never forced anything on him. But at the same time, what was happening was that there was a whole lot of people collecting around Abu Dharr Ghifari, and he, it was almost like, or at least Muawiyah and others, they were afraid that it might start a rebellion or something, and it might create some problems. So they said, he said, call him back. So Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu called him back to Medina. He came back to Medina. Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu offered him a seat on the council. He said, come and stay with me, come and stay by me, be one of the counselors, because you are one of the people who Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved very much, and we respect your wisdom. He said, no. He said, I don't want anything from you. He said, I don't want anything from you. So he said, what do you want? He said, allow me to leave Medina and go and live in Ar-Rabada, outside of Medina. He said, let me go and live there for as long as I live. So Uthman radiallahu anhu agreed. So Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu, with his wife, he went and he started living in this place called Ar-Rabada. He had his small camp there. And then the time came for Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu to die. And he was on his deathbed, and his wife was weeping. And he said to her, why are you crying? He said, why are you crying? She said, you asking, why am I crying? Why would I not cry? I mean, you are here, you are dying, I am alone. And they had a small servant boy. She said, there is not even, you don't even have a piece of cloth. I don't even have a piece of cloth for your coffin. Why wouldn't I cry? And I'm alone here. When you die now, what happens? Who does your ghusl and, dig your grave and all? How is this going to happen? Abu Dharr Ghifari said, don't cry. He said, do not cry. He said, go out there. He said, make some food. Yeah? These are the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to understand these people. He said, make some food. He said, food for who? He said, we are in the middle of nowhere. Who is here? There's no one here. I am alone. He said, make some food, because we are going to get some guests. She said, what guests? He said, I was with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in a gathering. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, one of you is going to die alone in the desert. And a group of the believers will come and they will witness their death. He said that group, everyone in that group has died. And they all died in the village or in the city or with people. He said, I am the only one left in that group. And I am alone in the desert. So he said, my Habib said that a group of believers will witness. So prepare food because they will come. And sure enough, his wife made some food. And then she went out to look and she saw a dust cloud in the distance. And the people came. And that was a small caravan led by none other than Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. Who is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is the Sahabi about whom Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if Abdullah ibn Mas'ud tells you something from me, take it. Whatever he tells you from me, take it. A man who was a beautiful Qari of the Quran. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to love listening to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud recitation. One day, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, they were with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Abu Dharr and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu came into the masjid. And he didn't know that they were there. And he stood and he started praying and he started reciting Quran. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to these two, he said, if you want to listen to the Quran the way it was revealed, listen to the recitation of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And see how they were. Umar ibn al-Khattab, as soon as they parted, Umar ibn al-Khattab went to look for Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and he said, I want to give you some good news. He said, what good news? He said, this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about you. That if you want to listen to the Quran the way it was revealed, listen to the recitation of Ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, Jazakumullah khair. He said, thank you for telling me, but Abu Bakr already told me this. They were quick to go with good news to their brothers. They were quick, they were not jealous. They said, Subhanallah, the Prophet praised you, Subhanallah. Quick to go. Quick to go. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud came and he came with his group of people and he greeted Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu. And they knew he was dying, he knew he was dying. So Abu Dharr Ghifari said, is there anyone who can give me material for a coffin? And they all offered. He said, no. He said, tell me, who are you? What is your work? What do you do? Ajib. These people lived by standards today which look like fairy tales, wallahi. He said, what is your work? What do you do? And every one of them, and these are, some were Sahaba, some were not Sahaba. They were younger people who were born after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. But this is the second generation. This is the first generation, second generation. What evil do you think they were doing? But they said, somebody said, I work in this work in the government, and somebody said, I do this work, and he refused for there was one Ansari young man, one Ansari boy, who said, I work on my own. He said, I do not work for the government. And he said, if you permit me, it will be a great honor for me if you accept this piece of cloth. And he took it from that boy and he said, he is untainted. And Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu passed away. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu narrated the hadith about Abu Dharr Ghifari and he explained it to the people. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke the truth when he said about you. He addressed Abu Dharr Ghifari and he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke the truth about you when he said that you will walk alone and you will die alone and you will be resurrected alone. And the people asked him, why walk alone we understand, die alone we understand, but resurrected alone why? He said, because this man has such fadail, so many of them together in one man, that there is nobody among the Sahaba who has all of these fadail together in one man. So he will be resurrected alone by himself. Allah will resurrect him alone by himself, because there's so many things and so many things that Allah has given him, so much of honor, that he is the only man with all of these things together in one man. And he will be resurrected alone, and that is what is meant. And Nabi Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu anhu explained this hadith to his companions, and then they did the tadfeen of Abu Dharr Ghifari radiallahu anhu. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to benefit from these stories of our Salaf by bringing them into our lives, by cleaning up our act, by learning to eat halal, by learning to earn halal, by learning to leave this luxury of this world which will end, by learning to live a life of simplicity, by learning to live lives which do good for others all around us, so that we become a source of blessing for everyone who is around us. And to stop grabbing people and grabbing money and grabbing this and grabbing that and chasing the world like a bunch of rats. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change these actions of ours and give us at least some of the nur that was in the lives of the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajmain. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with all of you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your coming. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you, to accept all your du'as. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, today is one of the odd nights. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you Laylatul Qadr inshaAllah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your ibadat and your du'as. And I ask you and I beg you and I plead with you to make dua for this ummah, to make dua for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because wallahi, one of the biggest sunnahs of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is we have left it, which is to make dua for the ummah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is to make dua for the ummah. Who is making dua for the ummah today? I'm not saying nobody is doing it. I'm saying that most of us, we make dua for ourselves. Alhamdulillah, it's good. We should make dua for ourselves. But who will make dua for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Let's revive this sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and make dua for his ummah, so that his ummah is relieved from all the various kinds of suffering and various kinds of oppression that it is buried under. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this and to be pleased with all of you. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajmain bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin wa alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.